Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. And I'm excited about this topic because it combines two of my favorite topics. One is a hobby of mine, which is to study psychology, and the other one is UI, front-end development and stuff like that. So let's get started. So my name is Keren Kenzi. I'm a senior software engineer at a startup called Agora. I enjoy sharing knowledge, and I help developers in their professional growth. If you need help in your professional growth, reach out after the talk or LinkedIn or whatever. I will be happy to help. And today I'm going to talk about cognitive psychology. Now, you probably wonder, am I in the wrong conference? Like, I came to see a Vue talk, right? So what the hell am I doing here? OK, so let me explain. As front-end developers, we often implement a design, right? We have a UX, UI person. They give us a Figma, and we need to implement it. But sometimes the UX, UI person is busy, or sometimes we work at a startup, and we don't have a dedicated UX expert. Or maybe we want to be more proactive in our day-to-day and give input and improve the design. Maybe the UX person missed something on the design, and we can offer an improvement, and it will result in a better product, and the customers will be happy, the sales will improve, so it's a win-win for everybody, right? So cognitive psychology is the study of mental processes and mechanisms, and UX, UI experts use principles from the cognitive psychology in order to give us the interface, and it affects our implementation and everything else. So let's see what we can learn in order to also share this knowledge and be aware of what drives UX experts when they design, so we can do the same. OK, so cognitive psychology is the study of mental processes underlying cognition. It includes simple processes such as perception, attention, memory, imagery. My memory is not that great. I need to look at a list of processes. And language, decision-making, and stuff like that. Problem-solving and reasoning, which are higher-level processes. And today I'm going to choose to talk about 3 of those processes that I find most relevant to our field. So let's get started. Let's talk about perception, attention, and judgment and decision-making. So, perception. Perception talks about how we perceive objects in the world. Like computers, like a function, we get input from our senses, and we translate it into a certain output. We translate it into the experience of the world surrounding us. And the Gestalt psychology, which is a German word, so I think you would know it better than me, offered a few principles to explain how we perceive objects. And UX expert follows those principles in order to design our interfaces. So the first law I'm going to talk about is the law of provenance. We recently had the Olympics. This is the Olympic sign. And this law of provenance is also known as the principle of the good figure and the principle of simplicity. So let's look at this sign. We can, of course, interpret it as 9 separate objects, right? But our brain has a limited capacity. Like a computer, we have limited capacity to understand stuff, to process stuff. So we want to keep it as simple as possible. So instead of seeing it as 9 different items, we grasp it as 5 different rings, right? OK. Let's move on. So how it affects us. Another principle of the Gestalt is the principle of proximity. When you look at those photos and you see the label, it will take your brain longer to figure out which picture belongs to the name, right? Why? Because we have the first picture and the second picture have the same distance when it comes to from the label of the name. But if we will do something like this, right, we have a gap between each photos. So principle of proximity talks about the fact that objects that are near each other are perceived as grouped together. So it's kind of a shortcut for our brain to process things. So this is a website for the conference, but we can apply it also to any other system that we design. For example, we can offer something like this, right? You see here the separation line, the divider? We actually don't really need this because our brain will take a look at those sections and see that the first group are closer to each other and the second group is a bit apart. So if I remove the separation line, okay, it looks more aesthetic, right? And our brain actually automatically figures out that the first section, because they are close to each other, is one thing, and that the second section is a different section because of the gaps and the CSS, right? So it's important to know those things when we want to design things. It keeps the design more aesthetic, more beautiful. We don't need to overload with dividers and stuff like that. A second principle that the Gestalt offers of how we perceive things is the principle of similarity. Objects that are similar in certain attributes, for example, in color, size, direction, are perceived as grouped together. For example, looking again at the website page, if we take a look at the schedule, what we see here, there is a pattern, right? When we have a break, which is really important because developers, we need food, we need coffee. So whenever we need a break, we can see the view icon, right? So the view icon is differentiating between speakers, which has a speaker icon, and the rest. So our brain automatically knows when it sees the schedule, okay, when I see the view icon, it's time for a coffee, it's time for a cake, it's time to rest, and when I see an icon of somebody, meaning that I have a talk on this time. So by keeping similar related object having the same style, for example, the same border colors, the same styling, the same color of font or font size, our brain automatically knows it is related. It reduces the load on the brain. And we can see here a real-life example. Recently, I had to implement a few filters in our system. So you can see here that we have several filters. Now our brain automatically knows, okay, they have a similar style, right? We have a title, we have a drop-down, so they are related. There are certain topics. While the download button looks a bit different, so automatically we know, okay, this is a button, this is a filter, so they're completely different. I know this is a simple example, but just know that our brain works in a very, in a wonderful way. Okay, attention. So it's really hard. We are at the end of the second day of the conference, and it's really hard to grasp attention because we are might be a bit tired. We might be on the computer trying to connect to work. We might want to look at our phone if we have a new Slack messages or team messages or whatever platform that you're using. So, what is attention? Attention is focusing on one thing. Hopefully, you can focus on my talk while ignoring other things. For example, in a cocktail party, in a network party from 2 years ago, you were networking with each other, right? We were having conversation while we ignore the other conversation happening around us. There are exceptions to this cocktail party effect, by the way, which are when, for example, if somebody calls our name, we will hear it. And if, for example, somebody in the crowd says view, we will probably draw our attention. So you say how it is related to system design, how it's related to the way we implement things. So take a look, for example, at this paragraph. If I want to say View Conference is a community-driven conference, join us on October here in this amazing hotel. So it doesn't really grasp our attention, right? But if I do something like that, and I'm making sure that our attention is focused on the important information. How do I do that? No, this is not me, but this is an example. But you can see here that the most important information is easy to locate and to identify. We can see here that we have a button to purchase the ticket, which is really important. You all seen it because you're here, right? And we straight away see the date and the location. So whenever you implement a system, whenever you implement an app, Keep in mind that you want the most important information to be easy to locate and identify. For example, if you have an alert in your system, you give it a red color, right? Why is that? Because you want to grasp the user attention to something that is wrong. Maybe he needs to increase the memory. Maybe some process failed. So this is a way we combine the knowledge of attention to the way we design system. And we can also use images to convey the same attention, right? We can use images. By the way, our brain, our visual system in the brain, has the largest amount of neurons. This is a fact. So it is not just a saying that we are visual creatures. And you can see here that the conference website also implemented follow this principle because it uses big numbers and big fonts in order to convey the important message. Meaning we have 30 speakers, we have 500 attendees, and stuff like that. So if you have important information, make it bold, make it big, and shout out. And if you are displaying graphs in your system, you might want to change the color of the most important information. You want to use other fonts to emphasize the stuff that you need. Ready for some game? Yeah? Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to test your memory. We already talked about memory being one of the processes that cognitive psychology study, and I want to study your memory. So I'm going to show you a few things, few stimuli, and I want you to try to remember as much as possible. Ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Done. Okay. Raise your hand if you remember the number 42. Okay. The number 5? Great. The word Vue.js? Okay. So basically your memory is good. You remember the first item that you see because you have more time to remember them. You memorize them. And we remember best the last things that we see because it's fresh in our memory. And we also remember things that stand out. And it is called the von Ristroff effect. Isolation effect. So when we see multiple homogeneous stimuli, the one that differs is most likely to be remembered. And again, why it's important for us? Okay, so let's see. This is an implementation of the von Ristroff effect. We can see here that when we design a system and we want, for example, in a configuration, in a settings, when we want to encourage the user to select a certain option, what we do is we make the option that we want them to choose stand out in a certain way. Usually there will be a recommendation tag next to the option. For example, if I want to book a flight to Germany, probably I will book the classic, it's the recommended. If it's recommended, I should book it, right? And let's quickly talk about more complex mental processes. Now, for the most complex mental processes, we have mental models to the rescue. Mental models are eternal representation of the world surrounding us. For example, when I say, think of a chair, you're all sitting on chairs, you have this certain prototype of a chair. It should have 4 legs, usually. It should have something to sit on, right? And those mental processes that we have, their internal representation, helps us in decision and judgment making. For example, if we have a dating app and we know that we need to swipe right or left, and then we encounter a new dating app, for example, we expect the same behavior because our mental model says that if we have a dating, we need to swipe left, swipe right, whatever we want to do. So designers use this principle when they think about designing a new system. So when, for example, if you have another app, not a dating app, but maybe a real estate app, and you want to present apartment to somebody, you might follow the same principle, making them swipe right and left for apartments that they like. So it makes the process of using the system more intuitive. So it's an important thing to think about. And does anybody know what this is? Okay, in real life, not 3D printed. Exactly. So we use those mental models also in icons in our system. For example, the floppy disk for saving, and either the can for deleting something, or the pencil for editing. So our brain automatically knows what to expect when we see those icons. And really quick, let's do another game. Are you ready? Scan this QR. Because we're going to talk about decision and judgment making. It's really important decision, and I'm so happy that we are after the coffee break. Otherwise, I will probably lose your attention at this point. And you just need to type in the number. Okay? Everybody scan the QR? Okay, so let's see. Which one is your favorite dessert? Let's see. I will hide the result. Don't copy from each other. By the way, I will tell the organizer that the most liked dessert should be in the coffee break for the next conference. So let's see if your taste is as good as mine. Just joking. Okay, let's see. What do we have here? Interesting. So 17, 14 takes the lead. Let's see, what is 17? Pancakes, of course. And a chocolate cake. Great taste, everybody, great taste. And what about now? Select your favorite dessert. Let's see. 3. The chocolate is the leading choice. Okay, so let's talk about it. Is it easier to make a decision when you have a lot of options presented or not? So whenever you have a lot of options presented, you make a comparison. It takes you more time to decide, and that is exactly what a Hike's law talks about. So how do we apply it to, for example, flight application? We need to only present up to 4 options to the user. Otherwise, the user will feel overwhelmed, and it might leave our system. So next time you need to implement an option, a setup, a module. In each step, in each phase, make sure to present only 3 to 4 options. You don't want your user to leave the system. And with flights, it's really important. You don't want to show them all the combination of all the seats possible, of all the luggage possible, because by the time they want to book the option, the price will probably triple, and we probably will stay at home. So it's important to know those things when you design a system. So only 3 to 4 options. And another way to improve it is to do some progressive disclosure, meaning take your users step by step through the system, gradually show them the option, and not like filling everything you need to do at the spot. Okay. And one last thing, decision depends on how choices are presented. So how it's related to us? For example, a study Conf in 2003 by Johnson and Goldstein check why people don't become organ donor in certain countries. And why they found out is that there is a difference if you are opt-in or opt-out in the option. For example, in countries when the organ of volunteering to be organ donor, the rate is high, they found out that the default option is checked as V. And in countries where there is a low rate of people volunteering, the default option is opt-in, meaning you need to take an active action in order to become a donor. So how it's relating to code and implementation and interface, whenever we opt-out procedure is the cookie example, you all know that. It relates to, for example, setting and configuration. If you want a user to behave in a certain way or choose a certain option, keep it checked in advance, because most of the user will want to avoid making a choice. They will leave the default as default and continue. So keep it in mind. And all this principle together makes the interface more aesthetic. And there is a static usability effect that claims that the more aesthetic a website is, it is considered more efficient, more effective, and easier to use, even if it's not really the case. So keep in mind, next time you design a system, you have to implement some sort of interface. Okay, so I've taken enough of your time, but if you want to read more about it or have a summary of this talk, you can scan this QR. It's a blog post that summarizes everything, and I hope you took something out of it, something out of this talk, and now do you know why your designer are designing the interfaces in a certain way. And I hope that you take more proactive role in your day-to-day job, suggest improvement and stuff like that. So I want to thank you for attending this talk. Have a wonderful day, and this is my LinkedIn if you want to connect, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.